So let's talk about something that I don't think gets enough attention, and that is mental health awareness. One of my goals today is to help break the stigma on mental health and to encourage people to seek help whenever they find that there's a problem. So, specifically, I'm going to talk about neurodivergence, and this is just an example of a person who was physically abused because he was intellectually disabled and he is not part of what we call as normal in the neurotypical world. So my name is Winona Lumage. I'm a person with lived experience, having been diagnosed with ADHD myself later in life. And then eventually I was also diagnosed with ASD. And also when I was younger, I was identified as gifted in elementary school. So here are people with autism, those who are famous and are quote unquote successful. We have Bill Gates and Elon Musk and the others. So we have someone controversial and we have someone whose products we've most likely used in our lifetime. So I would go as far before as being part of a appearance in media so that I could spread awareness as a person with lived experience so that more people will understand about these things. And if you look at this person, we oftentimes label this person as retarded, or in the Filipino word as sinto-sinto. And I want to break that because I don't think it's a good representation of the person as a whole. And I would also like to say that these labels are born of the fact that about these diagnoses, the research has only been unfolding recently in the past couple of decades. So here is a IQ bell curve, and I would just like to say that if you're part of the intellectually gifted, which is 2 standard deviations above, I don't like romanticizing that. And if you're part of the intellectually disabled, I don't like pitying that as well. So here's Dr. Linda Silverman, and she's been spreading awareness about giftedness and how it overlaps with certain diagnoses such as autism and ADHD, and the concept of asynchronous development or twice exceptionality, and how people who are part of that population are struggling invisibly because they look functional on the outside, they're very articulate, hyperverbal, but in other ways, they are very weak in terms of what society calls as functional things that we need to do, such as emotional regulation and lack of executive functioning. And because a lot of neurodivergent people think differently, behave differently, and are understood with lack, oftentimes we feel isolated. And this is one of the consequences of being neurodiverse. But as a consequence of that, a lot of neurodiverse people are actually more likely to experience clinical depression, anxiety, and all these other things. So some people resort to unhealthy ways of coping, such as taking drugs. And if these comorbidities are not attended to and without the proper supports, some people do end up in jail because of impulsivity that they have not been able to manage. And one of the saddest part is suicidality. With the autistic population, they are 7 to 9 times more likely to have suicidal ideation or attempts. And I think it's more difficult, in my opinion, when you're a late diagnosed adult because you have already undergone a lot of micro trauma that are not intended exactly by society or your family members, but because your brain is different, you've already been traumatized. So a lot of them actually need a lot of support, like they have to integrate how they experienced childhood later into adulthood, and that's very disturbing and hard to do. But with the right mental health supports, it is very possible to start living in accordance to yourself as a neurodivergent. Anyways, there is a event next month called the National Conference on ADHD. It's on October 18 to 19, and I would like to invite those who are in leadership positions or those who are in the academe or even corporate to attend to these things. I have submitted 2 abstracts that will be presented in the conference, I think on day 2. This is just part of me sharing about my insights so that we could have more of a model as to how we can treat, not necessarily treat as a disease, but treat as a person people with neurodivergence. And it's just part of having an inclusive society, and that's what is one of my goals. So, anyways, ASP is just one of the advocacy groups. There are still a lot like FINSA and FAN. You can go research them if you're interested, but we all have the same goal. This is the Socratic ignorance, which is I invite everybody to have this kind of humility that we don't know everything, we don't understand a lot of things, but if we stop judging and start having this attitude of curiosity, then we could all contribute to a humane and inclusive society. And I think it is very important to do so because human rights is fundamentally inherent for everybody, and part of our constitutional rights is to live in a safe environment. And because a lot of the threats to neurodivergence is social, I think it is important to spread awareness. So this is me empowering those who are part of neurodivergence to have this kind of supports and understanding for everybody. And even if we're a minority group, I think it's still important. So yeah, thank you.